Well, let's talk about this issue further. Joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Kurt Davis, the Research Director for Greenpeace USA, and in the studio with me here in London, Richard D. North. He's a Media Fellow at the Institute of Economic Affairs here in London. Kurt Davis, can I start with you? Does an environmental campaigner actually deserve the Nobel Peace Prize, do you think?
I think Gore deserves it more than anyone at this point. This is the largest peace, security, and environmental issue the planet has ever faced. And Gore has been the messenger, he's been a teacher, he's been an advocate, an activist. And the IPCC, along with him, this core of 3,000 some odd scientists around the world who assess the damage and the coming damage from global warming and try to spur urgency in the policy community. It's a great day for the issue, and Greenpeace would like to congratulate both parties for winning the prize.
He may have done well, but what does peace really have to do with climate change? Is there a direct link?
Absolutely, there's a direct link. What the scientists are telling us and what the economists are telling us is that global climate change is going to lead to massive disruptions, massive displacement of people, drought, and changes in weather patterns that will lead to agricultural failures around the world. And that will only lead to trouble, geopolitical trouble, and more conflict. So this is absolutely a peace issue, and not solving it causes a lot of problems for the world.
Richard North here with me in London. Some critics today have said that this is simply a political statement or even a political gimmick by the Nobel Peace Prize Committee. What do you think?
It's close to that. I mean, prizes are normally awarded to people who have achieved something, and at this point, Al Gore hasn't achieved anything since the world is doing extremely little about climate change. And what's more, of course, the bits of the world that are doing things about climate change, let's say Schwarzenegger or the EU or Tony Blair, were doing it long before this rather bad film, An Inconvenient Truth, that Gore made and is famous for having made. I mean, a High Court judge in London this week pointed out that it has 9, you might say, incidental scientific errors in it, but they're not actually incidental errors. It matters that this is a piece of propaganda which a judge has said is alarmist and exaggerated, and has 9 quite important errors in it. So at the level of truth-speaking, I don't think that this was a piece of work that was worth rewarding. And as a matter of sort of rewarding success, well, we're millions of miles from success, and so far as we're having success, it's being led by other people, not Gore.
Kurt Davis, that film was propaganda and it was exaggerated, and as has just been pointed out, a British judge here in the UK said that it should come with a health warning before it was shown to children.
Well, that's nonsense. I mean, the ruling in the UK aside, there may be a few things that may have been overstated or misstated in the film. Who knows whether that was editing or a slip of numbers. But the fact is that the tenor of the film is to show that the urgency of this problem eclipses all others, and the thousands of facts that were conveyed in the film show that to the people who see it. It has been widely successful in triggering people's response to this issue, and it's absolutely an achievement that stands above any other persons, single persons, on the issue of climate change.
Oddly enough, it's the matter of urgency and the extremeness of what confronts us which is problematic in Gore's propaganda message. Actually, there's quite a lot of dispute, not merely about what will really unfold, but what matters much more is even when somebody like me can accept completely that we're in for a rough time and because of climate change. But what is interesting is to know what on earth we are likely, what on earth we ought to do about it, really. Now, what's interesting about the Gore enterprise is that you watch the movie, you watch this work, and it is surprisingly light, virtually empty on the matter of what is a rational, what is a moral response to the situation we face, beyond saying something ought to be done, beyond winding us up about how awful everything is. He then actually leaves us in thin air. Now, that's where...
What do we not need? But do we not need to be wound up about that? I mean, and you were saying that he's achieved nothing, but somebody said to me today, well, actually, he's of all the people in the world, he's the one single individual who's had more effect in raising awareness about the possible problems, whether he's exaggerated them or not. He has raised awareness around the world that there is an issue.
Well, I think truthfulness and honesty and cautiousness of utterance, you know, sticking to the facts, talking very plainly to the facts, really, really matters. And I don't want a marginally better world if it's achieved at the effect of chucking serious commitment to truthfulness out of the window. I do strongly dispute that it took an inconvenient truth to put climate change on the agenda. I mean, I've been writing about it for 20 years, and therefore I chart fairly carefully in my own mind what's been going on. I would say that for at least 5 years, the political classes of the Western world have had this very thoroughly in their mind. The media has been banging on about it ad nauseum.
So he picked up the baton and ran with it?
I fear so. It's an attractive proposition that there is this leading figure who's made this movie, but we are where we are in a deeply complicated situation about climate change. He didn't get us to this interesting position where we're at, and the movie isn't a good movie.
Kurt Davis, I know you want to butt in there.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. North, you should, the viewers should know that you were in complete denial of climate change some years ago in some of your writing, so you've apparently changed your mind a bit.
Untrue. That is completely
well, I've read some of your writing.
Try my book, 1995, Life on a Modern Planet. It is a serious account of a serious threat. Before you start slinging around stuff
okay,
about
so
me,
onto the film. Onto the film, I think that it's true that he has been a catalyst. He's picked up the baton. He admitted that in his speech today. He gave credit to the thousands of activists around the world who have worked on this issue and educated people, and to the scientists who have raised this issue as a threat. And it could not be a more urgent threat. I mean, to think that we have time to think about this, to argue about the urgency at this point is really out of step with reality and a damaging proposition at this point.
Gentlemen, we are running out of time, but Kurt, I did want to ask you whether you think that Al Gore's win is going to have any influence over the opinions of the US public, who are notoriously, shall we say, backward in coming forward about climate change.
That's actually a misperception, because the American public, when polled, knows that this issue is an urgent one and knows that it is an issue that we must be dealing with politically. The presidential race coming this year, there's no doubt that global warming will be the central issue on the environment, and there's broad recognition across both parties. Leave Bush out. I mean, surely Bush will never win a Peace Prize, but leave Bush out. The rest of this country knows full well that we're dealing with this, and major corporations like General Electric, even General Motors, are dealing with it. Walmart is saying they're going to make money solving global warming. So this is happening in the U.S. The awareness is wide, and we're dealing with it despite Bush. Okay,
we must leave it there. Kurt Davis in Washington, D.C., and Richard D. North here in the studio in London with me. Many thanks, gentlemen. And still to come on Al Jazeera, an Iranian journalist claims he was beaten up by foreign troops in Afghanistan.